Alright you guys, welcome back to the channel. Now this time I'm going to share a little project with you that definitely gave me a run for my money. If you've seen some of the other stuff that I've done, I mean, you can tell that I do a little bit of everything. There's a video coming up actually for foundation repair, which I can't wait to do because I couldn't find anything really useful on foundation repair when I was trying to do it myself. So I figured I would jump in and just learn. In this particular case, if you remember my friend who had the tool storage shed that I built last year, he called me up one day and said, hey, I've got quite an interesting idea. He's gonna buy this Kawai Shigeru beautiful grand piano, and they're quite pricey, but let me tell you, they're some of the most fabulous instruments I've ever played personally as a piano player. Well, once I found out he was getting this, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be good. What are we doing? So he said, okay, the problem that I have right now with my current piano is I can't keep my cats off of it. Yeah, we don't want that. Scratches, nice, shiny, beautiful piano finishes, thousands and thousands of dollars, and we don't want a cat to scratch a beautiful grand piano. So what are we gonna do? Well, he hit me up and he said what I'd like to do is take the size of this opening for the room that this piano is going to be in. Now this wasn't a typical door opening, not like a standard, 28 or 32, 36 inch door. We had about 6 feet of width to work with, but there was just enough wall on the other side to where we could build a sliding glass door. And when you open it all the way, there was only going to be about 1 foot of glass showing. So we had plenty of room to get the piano in there. You're still talking about a good 4 to 5 foot opening. So we were able to get the piano in once the door was installed, and we knew it needed to be installed first because if there were any kind of mishaps, the last thing that we wanted was to damage this awesome new piano. So we started brainstorming, and he told me exactly what he wanted. It was going to be one nice big piece of glass, and we didn't want any obstructions. We wanted to be able to have the door closed and be able to see as clearly as possible to that piano so that there was nothing disturbing the view of it. And let me tell you guys, this is one of the most gorgeous pianos that I've ever seen. So with all that being said, I started brainstorming a little bit, and even though I probably held off on this project a little bit longer than I should have, it's because I had to go over it so many times in my head to try to figure out how are we going to get this humongous piece of glass to fit inside of some kind of steel frame, keep it from being too flimsy, install some handles, and even on rollers. And then what kind of track was I going to use on the floor, because we know that this thing was going to be way too heavy to just depend on a hanging system. So I started to draw a few things out. We went over and took some measurements, and I even priced out the glass. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind with the glass is if you're going to be using it for a door, now the codes are going to be different in your town or wherever you might be. But in the area of Texas that we're in, the guys at one of the glass shops told me that any glass that's going to be used on a door or within a certain amount of distance from the door, if it's going to be like a window or even, I can't remember if it was above it or not, you can look all this stuff up. It needed to be tempered glass, because tempered glass is going to shatter if anything chips it or breaks it, rather than making these huge knives and swords like regular glass that would, just break into all these dangerous pieces. So tempering the glass actually just about doubled the price. So we went ahead and we got this piece of glass on order first, and I want to say it was about $750, and you're talking about 80 inches tall, and I want to say it was about 6 feet wide. If you end up doing a project like this, you're going to have measurements of your own. But it was something outrageous, and I've never dealt with a piece of glass this size. And I can tell you, I was so afraid the whole time. My biggest fear was anything falling on this glass or chipping it and causing it to shatter and being out almost $800 and having to buy a new piece. Alright, so I have this massive piece of glass. Let's hope it makes it home safe. So I knew one of my main elements for cushion and padding in this door frame was going to be mounting some rubber seal inside the frame. But before I did that, I wanted to find a nice gasket that would go perfectly around the glass so that the glass itself was protected on all three sides before I even put it in the frame. And it was really cool because I was able to get on eBay and find the perfect size. It was a 1/4 inch wide and it was C-channel rubber, but it was the kind that had that thin metal, embedded in it so that the metal's not actually going to touch the glass, but it gave it a really nice like structural kind of, cushion. And it was almost like a hard rubber, soft plastic kind of thing. It's a very flexible gasket, and I was actually able to bend it around the corners of the glass, but I had to cut a nice little 45 out of it so that as it bent you didn't have them kind of overlapping, and it actually came out really nice. I was super happy with that gasket, and I knew that if all else failed, even the rubber paddings that I put on the frame itself before installing the glass, I knew that if all else failed, I would still have this really good solid gasket around the glass that would hopefully keep it from ever cracking. Alright, so here I am with the seal. Now, I ordered this stuff on eBay. I think I spent about $40 something, and I had to get the 1/4 inch. Needed to, get it to where it's gonna fit around the glass, and it has this nice little lip in it that kind of helps grip the glass. So all I'm doing right now is just test fitting it. I'm gonna pull a little bit of my protective cardboard up here, and let's see if we can get this to press on and how well it fits. So if I push it on, just run on about maybe an inch or two. Yep, it pushed right on. And wow, it stays. That's awesome. Okay, so that's gonna give us a nice little edge protector. What I'm thinking, around the edges of the glass, I'm gonna have to cut maybe some 45 or 22 degrees out of the sides, but I'm gonna try and run this as one continuous piece to where at least the corners have the rubber or whatever, the seal kind of going around it, so those are less likely to get damaged. All I'm doing is pressing it on to the edge, and what you want to do is get it to fit nice. Now, I didn't want there to be a cut in the corner because I wanted it to wrap around to protect that sharp corner, because of course if it gets chipped, it's tempered glass, it's probably going to shatter. So I'm protecting that sharp corner, and all I had to do is cut 45s or 22s, whatever, out of it. You're going to have to play with it, okay? See exactly where you want it to bend, and make that the point where your 45s or your angles hit when you're cutting it out. And then it'll bend around nice, and you just continue along. And also what I'm doing is I'm making it to where the break, this is going to be the top of the glass. Okay, the bottom is going to be over there where the seal runs nice and clean all the way around. The reason why is I don't want there to be any areas where the glass could be contacted when the weight is going down towards the bottom of the door. I want it to be a very consistent, no breaks in it. So I feel like since all the weight's going to be resting down there, it's okay to have this break at the top. And of course it would probably be fine at the bottom. I'm just being extra cautious with everything I can. Okay, when you get to the end of the seal, what you want to do is cut it to where it's just right. It meets up perfectly to the beginning. Okay, you come around, but I leave a little bit of a lip on there so that it can cover over as it goes on. So it's gonna overlap. I get it to fit just right, perfect together, just like that. And then you've got a little bit of an overlap there, so there's less likely that it's gonna ever push through and let any metal hit it. There is going to be another layer of padding installed in the frame though, so this is just one out of 2 or 3 different layers of cushion. So let's go get this frame done. So once the functionality stuff was kind of figured out, I knew I could have it sliding across a track. I know I could have wheels at the top that would keep it smooth and keep it in line and where it needed to be. But the biggest part of this project was figuring out how I'm going to get this huge, heavy piece of glass to set inside of a metal frame. And of course, as I mentioned, the tempering part, we don't want any metal to actually touch. So anytime I welded through the frame somewhere, I had to make sure that I ground those welds down, because even though there was going to be a nice rubber gasket in there, I didn't want any blunt metal areas protruding through that could possibly hit this glass, either in transport or maybe whenever you're sliding it. You know, I didn't want it to bounce in there and be able to hit any kind of protruding metal objects. So it was very critical that through the whole process of this thing, anywhere the glass was going to be setting inside of the C-channel of metal, I had to make sure that it was always smoothed down and that there was nothing that was going to be a potential hazard for cracking this glass. Now, as I'm getting this frame put together, what I ended up realizing was, given the sizes of the metal that I had available, I was going to need to use 2 different pieces of angle iron to actually make this C-channel, because I didn't have actual C-channel to work with. And of course, if anything ever did happen where this glass broke, the last thing that we would want is have to rebuild a whole new door frame. So the best way I found to make this thing maintainable is that I was going to build what's basically an angle iron tray, if you will. So if you laid it down on the ground, it would be like a picture frame where you had one flat side on the ground, one flat side sticking up. Then you could lay the piece of glass inside of it, and then I would be able to mount my hold down brackets, which were actually just another long piece of angle iron. But instead of having one big frame, I used 4 separate sides. And then as I kept that project going, I realized that with these hold down brackets, I could actually use those as well to mount my other attaching hardware, such as the upper wheels, the lower wheels, and the handles. So eventually I figured out the best way to get these bars to mount to the main frame, but not have to worry about screws protruding into the main C-channel and hitting the glass or anything like that. So ultimately I figured it out. It just took a lot of trial and error, and I kind of had to put a few pieces here and maybe make a few welds and see how this was going to work, you know, drill a hole here or there. Sometimes you're just going to have to go backwards and forwards until you figure out exactly what to do. Well, here's a brief explanation on how this is going to work. Never mind the piano's under restoration in the background. Okay, so we've got a big rectangular angle iron frame here. So this is going to be a side. Now this is an area about where the handle's going to go. But what's happening is I'm welding tabs on like this so that I can go on and install another piece of angle iron. So the frame is made out of 1-inch angle iron, but then I'm going back and I'm putting in a piece of 3/4 angle iron. Now why am I doing that? Because if you look at the inside, what I want to happen is I want the amount of glass that's covered to be about the same on the inside and the outside. Now, it's not exact, but it's pretty dang close because we're setting a 3/4 inch piece inside of a 1-inch piece, so there's the thickness that allows that 3/4 piece to almost match. So that's what's happening here, and as you can see,
this is the channel that the glass is gonna sit in. Let me take this glove off, hold on. Just hang upside down for a second. I can point. Now, this is the channel the glass is gonna sit inside. The glass is 1/4 inch thick, and it's gonna have about a 1/4 inch of padding, you know, on the outside of it and the inside, whatever you want to call it. This is an interior door, so both are actually inside the house. But on both sides of the glass, we're going to have about a 1/4 inch of padding. Also, it's going to be lined with kind of a thick rubber at the back, because the glass is going to be setting down on that. I haven't decided yet. Either a thin sheet of wood before the rubber, or rubber and then the glass gasket. There's also a gasket that goes all the way around the piece of glass before I even install it. So we're going to have protection around it, and it is tempered, because glass has to be tempered to be used as a door. So that's the way that this is going to work. I'm going through and I'm tapping holes so I can put these machine screws. You can see here how it goes. I haven't countersunk them all yet, but that's the way it's going to work. These will be countersink into this little tab. Now, the reason why I've added a tab here is because I couldn't find anything readily available that was like a good L channel. Like, I could have definitely used something that was maybe like 1 inch on this side and then maybe 1.5 inches on this side. That would have been awesome. But locally, I checked around, I just couldn't find anything that did that job. And in a way, it's okay, because I weld these little tabs on here, and like, this is the bottom. It's not really going to be visible. The areas that are visible, I am coming up with some ideas to kind of clean that up a bit, but nonetheless, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So, also on the bottom, these little pads are going to double not only as the part that holds the other angle iron on, but it's also going to be where the caster's set. So there's going to be 4 casters across the bottom. I could even do 5 if I wanted to. I might go pick up another one just so I have 5. And I'm going to weld all thread studs that come off of here. So basically, let me go grab my piece of all thread. So I'll be cutting from this piece here, and I'll just be welding pieces of this all thread to the bottom of that pad. So if the wheels ever had to be replaced, you just get under there, jack the door up a little bit, and basically the wheel is going to slide over those 4 studs. You won't have to worry about holding it with a wrench. You won't have to worry about bolt heads being inside of the channel. That's the main reason I got to do that, because I can't have anything protruding inside this channel. It has to be clean as can be all the way around. I need that inner C channel to be no bolts, no obstructions, no welds or anything. This part I'm going to have to clean out. I'm going to have to grind that down a bit, but it's okay. So that's why it's okay for me to tap the screws to come through here. And anything else that needs to be fastened is going to have probably some all thread like this welded to it. And you know, it'll be a small piece. I'll be cutting off like short little pieces of this all thread. Basically, I do things here with one hand. Basically, just enough to kind of go through the caster like that for the nut to go on. Probably about right there, or you know, a little less. Just enough for the nut to go on, and how it's gonna be held. So yeah, that's where we're at. Big project. The main thing is trying to make sure this glass is protected, and that when we transport it, it's gonna have lots of padding around the inside of that channel so it doesn't shatter. Alright, so I'm getting ready to cut 14 more of these. I just drilled all the holes and did the countersinks as well. So they'll be ready once they're cut, ready to weld right on. There we go. What you're looking at now is the part that's gonna hold the glass in is this 3/4 inch angle iron, and it's held in. I'm countersinking some screws on these little tabs, and I've already got the holes pre-drilled. I've got the outside countersunk, but I do it on here so that I can make sure that all these screws are going in as perfectly centered as possible. Basically, this piece would only fit here. It's not gonna fit on the top because I'm making these holes all very specific to this one piece.
Now, out of all the metal fabrication and woodwork type things that I've done, I'll say that besides a welding machine, one of my favorite tools to have in my shop is a tap and die set. I think there's nothing, well, there's definitely things cooler, but to me, I think it's very cool to be able to make your own threads and make your own bolts or your own, threaded studs or whatever. There's been quite a few times that I was building a part and I said, well, instead of welding a nut on the back of this, it's 1/4 inch thick metal. I'm just gonna make some threads in a hole, and there we go. You don't have to. So I think that's super cool. If you're a DIY person and you're working with metal, and you want to be able to attach with bolts and things, I feel like a tap and die set is one of the first tools that you should be buying instead of one of the last.
I'm gonna go ahead and tap the threads into this hole to get it started a little bit. That's always a pain. I need to put some tape around that. So get this hole started, and basically, so I had to drill the smaller hole through the receiving side. There's a bigger hole here that allows the screw to slip through to the threads, and now we're doing the threads actually in this inner piece. You can see that the tap just slides right through this little outer tab here, so the threads aren't being started until it hits here. So that's the way this is being done. Very tedious, very slow. So I've got 10 holes that I'm doing on this bottom section like this, and then along the long sides there's probably gonna be somewhere around probably 14 to 16 holes like this on each side. So it's I'm doubling them because I want them to be extra strong where they hold together. Even though one screw, I'm using some nice like aircraft grade stainless steel screws, but I'm using 2 of them just so, in the event somebody ever messed with it and it got stripped out, hopefully they wouldn't do it to the second one. They should never have to take this apart unless the glass hopefully never gets broken, but if it were to ever get broken, you would have to remove these stop channels or these angle iron pieces to pull the old glass out and stick a new piece in there. So there we go. Now I've threaded this one. I'm going to kind of clean it out a little bit. Just like that. You can see it threads back out. And then I'm going to test the screw that's supposed to go in there. I'm going to go ahead and put it in, make sure it fits just right. And I've got these holes drilled to give me a really nice tight thread in there, because I don't want these screws to shake around very easily. Oh yeah, it's really tight. You can tell when you're cutting threads with the tap that it's a little harder to turn when you're drilling your pilot hole a little bit undersized. I don't even want to say small because it's just barely, but you can tell it's a little harder to turn this. You just have to be more careful so you don't break it. But yeah, the screw fits in here nice and snug now. Could probably stand to be countersunk a little bit more. So I'm going to use this bigger bit here I'm countersinking with. Let's see if that did it. We're just boring it out a little bit on top so the screw head sinks down in there. That's probably about as good as I'll need it. And there we go. I got 2 screws in there now. I'm going to finish out the rest.
And you know, to elaborate a little bit on the logistics of this project, with any project, if you have space to work with, things can be a little bit easier. Say for instance, if I had more space at the bottom, I probably could have used some bolts to hold the bottom wheels on, because I could have used a big metal channel, and the bolts could have went inside of that channel or inside of some rectangular tubing before it ever got to the glass. But instead, I had so little extra space to work with, going from the ceiling to where the opening started. There was a little bit of wall below the ceiling, so I had just enough room to get the glass frame to set right above that door seal, and then just enough to mount the wheels. I mean, I might have ended up with a 1/2 inch to maybe 1 inch of clearance at the top, but it was such a close window that everything I did just had to be tediously thought about. And that's why there were points where I had to thread the metal into the angle iron and actually weld it in and not be able to use bolts, or, you know, because a bolt's going to have an extra bit of thread coming through. Or if you did it from the top, you're going to have the bolt head. And we know we can't have the glass sitting on the bolt head, because that's just the perfect recipe for a chip or crack, you know, to damage the glass. So this door was built with everything in such a close kind of proximity that there wasn't really a lot of excess room to get away with the easier routes. Like, everything kind of had to be, you know, it was like maximizing the efficiency of, like, say, an electric vehicle, so you can get that extra couple miles of charge every time that you charge it. You know, you need that extra 30 or 40 miles, so you had to get rid of this, you had to re-engineer this just to get that thing to work right. It's almost what it felt like. Of course, on a much simpler scale. I'm just designing a glass sliding door here, but it's kind of that same concept. I had to try and really utilize every little 1/8 inch that I had and try to make it all fit together as tightly as possible. So as an experienced do-it-yourselfer, you know, you'll start to realize that half the battle is definitely the brainstorming. There's a lot of mind work in some of these projects, where other projects, you kind of know exactly what you're doing. You can get started on it and just get going. But with this particular project, there was a lot of thinking involved. You know, I'm trying to think, what would I do for the track system on the bottom? Can I order these parts? Am I going to have to build the track, which I ended up having to build? I also knew that those sliding barn door kits that people like to use these days are pretty durable, and that you can typically hang some pretty heavy doors from those. But I didn't want to hang this door, and I thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do is maybe order one of those kits, and that's going to help get me started. I figured if anything, I could have the points at the top where the rollers would still slide on a track, but that was only going to stabilize the door, and it was going to keep it up. But at the same time, I wanted to install it to where there were still wheels underneath that allowed most of the weight of the door to actually rest on the ground. So to kind of get this thing going, I went ahead and I ordered the roller kit for the top. And that was a good thing because that allowed me to kind of play around with it and see how much space that I'm going to need above the door to install those rollers. You know, it was rollers plus the track, things like that. There's a lot of little logistics that went into it, and it was good to have as many parts as I possibly could so that I could start doing a really, really rough mock-up of this thing and then eventually get a nice drawing for what size that I needed to build the metal frame. So as my ideas came together, I started to buy as many parts as I possibly could because I feel like if you can get your hands on parts, and like I said, you start kind of doing a rough mock-up, you really start to get some good details, and then there's some things that you probably didn't think about that are going to come to the surface, and you can say, okay, well, wait, I got to do something about this, or I got to figure this out. I decided to go with 5 rigid casters, which is basically the non-swiveling type. They have like the little V kind of frame that the wheel sets in. And what I wanted to do is mount 5 of these wheels at the bottom, and then I built a track that used some flat bar steel, and then I decided to take some round bar and weld it onto the sides. And I want to say I used 3/8 or almost ½ inch, something like that. I'll try and look back and maybe somewhere later in the video, if anything, I could tell you. But basically, the round bar welded to the sides of the flat bar allowed me to make a really good durable track, and also it was going to help guide those wheels and keep them from jumping off the track. Even if the door rolled pretty straight, I wanted something on the sides where I knew that those wheels weren't just going to come off of it very easily, because this was going to be installed on carpet.
Alright, a brief rundown of what we got going on. So we've got the nice U channel or C channel, whatever you want to call it, made for the glass to set in. Of course, there's going to be lots of padding and things in between it. We've got the rollers that are going to be for the top. Basically, it's not going to hang, but these are going to be to keep the door on a track and stabilize it. But most of the weight will be supported on the bottom rollers. So the door is going to roll on the ground. It's just the top rollers are going to be kind of a stabilizing method. And you know, there's going to be a little bit of weight on it. It's going to be distributed fairly evenly the way that we mount it. And then over here we've got the 2 handles. We've got the outer handle is the only thing that's going to obstruct the view of the piano, and that won't be too bad. And then the inner handle was able to be hidden behind the door. So that's why those are placed on separately. It's better to have one handle in the glass view than having 2 of them. So the last thing I got to put on now is the bottom rollers, and this thing will be ready to paint.
Alright, here's a quick explanation on how I'm fastening the caster wheels to the bottom. Now I'm having to modify the caster because I need a little bit more room. I don't want this wheel sitting so high, so I've put a hole down here. And if you wanted to, you could weld the old hole up and shave this down kind of nice. The reason I don't do that is because I like that this is just giving it some extra structure here, and it's really not going to hurt anything. So that's what I'm doing there. I've adjusted the whole size so that, the whole height, so that the wheel is actually going to rest a little closer to this. There was a lot of excess gap, and I need
all of the space I can get right now. So the way this is going to fasten to the bottom of the door frame is I've pre-drilled some holes here. You can see these 4 holes. Okay, the track like this one, I don't know if you can see in the camera, the track that holds the glass in is going to fasten by these 2 holes, but then I'm going to have all thread that goes into these holes, and it's going to weld from the back. Now the only problem with that is when I weld from the back, I have to go back and grind those welds kind of flat, because I can't have the glass riding up against anything sharp or even kind of convex. I need this flat track to be consistent all the way inside. Even though the glass is going to have a lot of padding around it, it has a gasket that fits all the way around, and that's already probably quite a bit of padding. But the gasket's going to go around, and then I've left enough extra space to put a 1/4 inch foam rubber padding all the way around the inside of this. So what I want to do is keep everything as flat as possible. I'm going to drill the holes. I'm going to actually thread them, because when I thread this piece of all thread in, I want it to be able to stay straight, and then I'm going to weld from the back. And after I weld, I'm going to grind it down flat and smooth. The other thing that you want to do is I'm probably going to take a larger drill bit and make kind of like a countersink on the inside, so that whenever I weld, there's a lot of material and penetration going more throughout, and then when I grind it down, it's still going to be holding well, instead of just completely grinding down the weld that you put on top of the surface. So that's how I'm going to hold this on. It's going to go here. There's going to be 4 little studs that are going to be drilled and tapped, and they'll get welded from the inside, and I'll clean it up a bit and see how it holds. There we go. On this project, I was definitely doing a lot of thread tapping, and I even ended up breaking my thread tap, but I think I had just enough of it left over that I was able to get through the rest of the holes without having to wait for the next day to go buy a new one. Now, I had to be pretty strategic with some of these bolts that I had to, put through, especially for the wheels. When I was welding the little pieces of all thread to hold the bottom wheels on, I wanted to thread that hole just a little bit, but I also drilled on the inside a little so that there was plenty of room for my weld material to fill into that hole and create a puddle of penetration, to where once I ground the weld down, there was still going to be plenty of fused material in there. I didn't want to just weld the stud from the inside and then grind it, because I wouldn't have very much, welded content in there. So I found that it was very useful to drill the inside about, a 1/4 of the way into the metal, and then once I got those bottom studs to kind of thread through a little bit, I could decide exactly how high that I wanted them to go through. And then once I made the weld, it was almost like a perfect bond that took minimal grinding, and I knew that those things were going to stay nice and strong. The last thing that I wanted was for any of those wheel studs to ever break and have to basically take the whole door apart just to be able to get that thing back to the shop and weld the piece back in. So after this part, you'll see where I grab the larger drill bit and I just lightly drill the very top of the inside of the hole so that the weld material can fill in like a little puddle. Now I wanted to go into detail and elaborate a little bit more on what's going on here, because I'm actually running this thread tap only far enough, and I can feel it. I want it to run far enough to where the all thread goes in and gets kind of tight, which I can feel that it is. Okay, well, hold on, I might have just kind of screwed myself. Okay, we want it to go in there kind of tight, and I'm going to show you about what you want from the other side as soon as I get this where I want it. So I'm not going to cut all the way through with this tap and clean it way out. I just want it to cut enough to hold the all thread in to the height that I want it to protrude until I can weld it. So right back here, oh yeah, there we go. That's awesome. Okay, now I'm gonna see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Grab the camera. So what you want to see back here is you want to see some thread protruding through the hole, but you don't want it to be coming higher. I mean, it could a little bit if you wanted it to, because it would all melt down together when you weld. But ultimately, when you grind the weld, you want to know that you have good penetration inside there and that you've gotten some metal, you know, from the all thread that's going to fuse with the metal inside the hole as well. And then you know that, especially down here, this is the part that's more important, is at the bottom, because the glass is going to ride here. So we want to make sure we can get these welds nice and flat and know that there's some good fusing of the metal inside there, even after we grind flat. Sorry about the shakiness. I've got a welding glove on still. So that's about what you want. I'll run a nice little weld inside here, and I know that thing isn't going anywhere. Okay, so I got a stud welded in, and you can see here I've got a pretty nice flat weld. I almost don't even need to grind it, but I know that it heated up that all thread pretty good, because you can see how warm it got. It just colored it, and I saw that it was red when I got done welding. So just like that, it's this kind of attention to detail and tediousness that keeps that stud from coming loose and you having to uninstall this whole door and take it back to your shop. I mean, it would be a nightmare. This room is going to have a piano, a really nice grand piano in it, and in order for this door to be taken out, the piano would have to be taken down and moved out of that room. So this is not something that I want to have to ever undo or redo. So that's what it takes. Allow the stud to protrude through a little bit from the other side, weld it real good, and then we're going to grind these welds down probably 75 or 80% flat. The ones on the bottom are going to have to be flatter, but these aren't as important because the glass isn't going to ride up there. The glass is going to ride down here. So there you go. Alright, so I've got all the wheels fitted on. I've already welded all the studs to the right, to the left, like all the way down. Let's turn the camera a bit. So all the studs are welded on, and I've already made sure that all of the little caster plates fit. And what I'm doing is, I went ahead and put one on here just to make sure everything worked fine. I did have to modify these. a bit to raise the wheel just about a ½ inch so I get a little bit more clearance. This door is literally built about as tall as it could be built for this room, or else we'd be running into bigger problems. So what I wanted to do was put one of them together, just make sure I'm on the right track, and it seems like everything's good. So now I've got a little bit of a, it's just because of my phone clip being in the way, but for the most part it was pretty easy to put it on there. Let's see, just pop this wheel out so you can see exactly how this wheel plate's held on now. We're going to take it off and grind all the welds that are inside on the other side so that you know, nothing is protruding into the glass padding. Make sure it's good and smooth, but otherwise the studs welded in really nice, and I think they're gonna hold really well. The, you know, penetration with that countersinking the hole on the other side definitely helps some material melt all up in there, so that's what we want. I think it's gonna be a pretty strong, reliable system, and of course I use these locking nuts here at the bottom, the nylon lock nuts, so you know, nothing's coming apart. Make those studs just long enough for them to go through, and yeah, that's what we're doing. So there you go.
Man, lost sight of who I am, but right in front of me was the answer. 'Cause on Christmas I feel joy, and I turn back to a boy. The answer is to stay young forever. This is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song. Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. I'm never gonna look back. 'Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today.
Now, as far as attaching hardware, we had bottom wheels, we had upper wheels, and then we had handles. Now, I knew that once I got this door built halfway, maybe for the most part, I knew I'd be able to figure out the handles because the door was gonna shut on the inside of the room. So we wanted a handle on the inside that was probably going to be right along the frame of the glass. And then for the outside, since the door was going to shut a little bit behind the wall, I needed to build a bracket that was going to allow me to have a handle with a little bit of an extension that would come off. And what's really cool about that is that it kind of hovered over the glass. And, you know, even though it was a little bit of extra work, because I knew I didn't want to drill any holes. I mean, I didn't want to have any holes in the glass, which would have had to have been done before the tempering process. Because again, you can't modify the glass at all. If you get a piece of tempered glass, you're stuck with it that way. You can't put any holes in it, you can't cut it, you can't do anything. So even before we had the glass tempered, I knew I didn't want holes in it. I didn't want any points of compromise where I felt like it was gonna weaken the overall piece. I knew that with this huge piece of glass, I wanted it to be as strong as it could possibly be with no kind of compromise. So the handles weren't really too big of a deal, but I think in the end they came out really nice, and it was quite a nice little modern design that they ended up having. So of course, before I did the paint job, I was able to assemble all the parts on the door just to know that once I got it there, everything was going to fit together and function. I wanted to put on the handles, I wanted to put on the wheels, and just kind of make sure that when I go through the process, especially on the final day for installation, I wanted to make sure I had covered as many bases as I possibly could. So it was a very good idea for me to just put everything together and kind of brainstorm as if I was actually in that room putting the door on for the last time. Like, what kind of problems could I run into? And how do I avoid having to deal with those on site on the day of installation?
This is a pretty cool phase to be at. Now I've got to get new clevises for the wheels, so don't pay attention to the long bolts and things sticking through just to hold them for now. But what I've got is, it ended up being a nice U-channel, so the glass is going to sit in there all the way around. It's got to be smooth. And if there's any place that I had a weld or something, I know there's one or two, maybe on the inside. But all the way around, it's got to be smooth because, oh yeah, these need to be ground down a little bit. Even though they wouldn't contact the glass, it's just a little too close for comfort. But my channel is smooth. All right, there are screws that are all countersunk out here that are holding the outer piece of angle in. As you can see, this isn't just a C channel. This part actually detaches. So, pretty much already know that. But this is kind of neat because I'm getting to see it come together and what it's going to look like. This would be like outside of the piano room. You can see it rolls okay. Even on this concrete, I've got rocks and metal shavings, so it's kind of, it seems a little bit, you know, rough, but it still works fine. Up there, the rollers are facing the other way because they're actually going to be mounted in the piano room where this is going. This part is actually on the other side. So this is like the outside of the door. When it closes, this part is going to disappear behind that wall. So you're only going to see, I'm going to adjust it to where it closes, where basically the handle's just sticking out like that. And that's what we've got. So we've got the inner handle because there's a little bit more room on the inside of the room. The inner handle is here. And that way I didn't have two handles obstructing the view. We only have one. So that's pretty much where she's at. So here's a quick run on how I'm finishing this to make it look a little better. The side on the outside of the door is flat, so it's going to end up painting and looking fine. The inside would be this angle iron, and I don't want to see that. So I found some quarter round wood trim, and each piece that goes around the frame, like that piece there, this piece, I'm using Liquid Nails construction adhesive to bond this in. And you can see I've got another piece, let's see, at the bottom, this would be the bottom of the piece. I cut a 45 to match the angle iron. And then, when we put it here, it's gonna meet up with the bottom piece where the caster wheels are. This piece is gonna have it too. You can see right now I've got it disassembled over here. So this piece will get the trim. Here's the top piece, I already have the trim. I used a couple screws to hold it in while it's drying, and then also taped it to clamp it. And also, you'll want to make a mark and then pre-drill some holes about halfway through so that these screws will also thread into the wood with what's left of them. That'll help keep this stuff in place too. So this whole piece will be painted together as one with the industrial satin black. It's a 4-part mix. I mean, I think I use the paint, the hardener, a reducer, and an accelerator. So that's what we're doing to clean up the inner trim of the door.
So after many hours of sparks flying and smoke in the paint booth and lots of welding, it was finally all fabricated, and I was ready to start sanding this thing down and getting the paint finish put on. On this one I used that really nice satin black finish that I love that's made by Axalta, and if I'm remembering correctly, Axalta is the company that owned DuPont, or basically bought it out. And if you're familiar with DuPont, they make some great car paint products. It's super durable stuff. This is actually an industrial paint. Now, even with the accelerator added into it, it mixes with a hardener. So you've got the paint main base component, you've got your hardener, and then even with the accelerator added in, this paint still sometimes takes about 3 days to be dry enough to where you can handle it and not put fingerprints in it. But once it dries, this stuff is wonderful. I love the look of it. It's a very consistent satin black, and I knew it was going to look great on this door frame. Alright, we have painted parts. That is the top piece right here. And then that's the bottom piece that holds the glass in. You can see when you paint that wood trim that's all fastened in there. It's hard to even see it in this light, but these lights are so bright. So there you go. That's the quarter round wood trim. So that's the part that's going to show. And then here's the big frame. It was hard to get the bottom, but I had a feeling that was going to be a little bit of an issue, but I got it. All the way around. Here's one of the handle brackets. And I love the way that satin black works. It's of course it's glossy while it's wet. But when it cures, it comes out amazing. It's really nice stuff. The finish I get out of this, it's an Imron, of course made by Axalta now because they bought out DuPont or whatever, but it's an Imron Industrial. It's at 3.5 reduced gloss. And it's kind of like when you see those matte finishes on cars, satin finish or whatever. So even though it looks really shiny right now, it cures to be this perfect kind of low gloss sheen. So there it is, 4 parts painted. We just got just a few left. The bottom track and then the 2 long sides that hold the glass in. So with the paint finish complete, I was ready to start adding in my rubber gaskets, and I found some window seal gasket material at the local hardware store, and I figured it would work pretty well. I went ahead and lined the inside where the glass was going to basically lay in first. Then I also lined the seal on the inside that was going to go against the edge of the glass. And I knew it was going to be hard to get the glass to fit in this thing like a tray. To be totally honest, if I had to redo this project all over again, I would have maybe allowed 1 extra 1/8 to 1/4 inch of the steel clearance for the glass to sit in there a tiny bit more loosely. But nonetheless, I got the glass to fit in, and it fit really, really tight and snug like a glove. And then I knew at that point things were a lot more sturdy. I didn't have to worry as much about the glass flexing, and then I was able to kind of flip it around and get the hold down brackets put on. So that was really cool. This was a super rewarding part of the project, and as I started to see it come together, I knew that it was probably going to work out well. There were just still some unknowns, and that's probably the scariest thing dealing with a big expensive piece of tempered glass is those unknowns. Like, what's going to happen when I stand this thing up? What's going to happen when I get it into the house, or even transporting it in the trailer? Do I lay it down? Do I leave it standing and strap it against the wall? There were just a lot of questions. But luckily we ended up pulling it off and made it safely to the installation location.
Now, since that rubber gasket's going to serve as a pretty good protector around the glass, I've got some 1/4 inch kind of soft foam and then some 1/8 inch 3M foam that's a little bit more sturdy, a little stiff, you know. It's not as soft as the spongy one here. And I'm going to put it around the inside of the frame. And I want to put it here first because you always want the edge of the glass to be protected. And then whatever's left, we're going to put it here because that's where the face of the glass is going to hit. So you wouldn't want to put the padding for the face of the glass and then barely have room left for this, because then it could slip off one side. So I want to make sure that I've got this in the middle where the glass is going to sit real nice, and then the edge, the foam that goes this way is going to overlap it a little bit. So the glass is going to kind of sit in between it. And then the parts that hold the glass in are also going to have the foam, so it's going to keep it in there nice. Okay, so this is the bottom of the door. So the glass is going to sit against this side long term. That's where the weight's going to be. So what I've done is I've double foamed it from here. Put in the more rigid 3M foam that's 1/8 inch, and then here's the 1/4 inch thick. It's a little softer. Now I'm only going to put this stuff here. I'm going to cut it a little skinnier. And then when I put on the rail that closes the glass in, it's going to have that same rubber foam on this side as well. So the foam is going to hold the glass in from this side and from that side. It's going to be nice and snug. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm installing some foam gaskets around the metal frame. Even though I put a nice gasket on the window, I got some 3/4 foam that I wanted to put down first because that's where the edge of the glass is going to ride against. And then down on the bottom, we're doing some more rigid foam under it because that's where all the weight's going to kind of push, so I don't ever want the glass to feel like it's too hard against the bottom. You know, so some 3/4 is what I put on first in the where the edge is going to hit, because you wouldn't want the edge to be able to, like, you know, slide up there or whatever. And then the part where the face of the glass is going to go, it's a 1/2 inch foam that I put there. So this is going to be all the way around. And when I set the glass in here, I'm hoping it fits just right and all the padding fits. If I designed everything just right, we'll see. So I'm assembling the glass into the frame now, and I just softly used a wood clamp to get the rubber gasket to compress a bit. But as soon as you get those holes to line up, you see with the outer trim that holds the glass just like that, it's pretty awesome. As soon as you get the holes to line up, you just put those screws in. So it's just taking a little bit of compression, but now I've already got the bottom done, and we're getting what would be the top section of the glass. This is the part that goes up. So we're getting that secured in, and then I'll get the bottom rails installed. Coming out pretty cool. And as you can kind of see, the finished product is what it's gonna look like over here. It's a nice round wooden trim. And then on the outside, if you're looking at it from the outside of the room, it's this nice flat angle iron. So you'll see all that when it's done. Okay, I wanted to take a real short video of the, this is the gasket that I ordered off of eBay, and it's a 1/4 inch wide. And then at the corners, you'll see more video on that where I was 90ing the turns. But the bottom part of the gasket that runs along the edge on the outside, it never stops. I've got it where it continues around. That's why I cut out a 45 and bent it, because I wanted the corners of the glass to be protected by this gasket first. And then all the padding I put in, there's padding that lays, of course, against where the edge is gonna sit, padding that goes there, which you can see through the glass. And then before I put on the stop for the inside, it has padding as well. So there's padding on both sides of the glass, and then there's also the gasket that protects all the way around 3 sides of the edge. It protects the faces and the edge. So there's a lot of padding here, and also the compression it takes to press all that together, it's kind of difficult, but you just have to work it slow and be careful and make sure that your measurements are right with how much channel that you left. So that's the way it's going. You can see that gasket that I had to order. You'll place that around the whole piece of glass. And what I did was I started halfway across the top, so we didn't have the seam on any of the corners. So it starts there, it runs all the way around. You cut 90 out of the sides, but you still allow the bottom, the edge of it, to run around and protect the corner of the glass. Same thing all the way around. You cut out those 90s on the side so it bends a little easier, but then you keep going and it presses on the glass. And then you get back to the middle, you just get it as perfect as you can, as far as getting it nice and flush and not leaving any gaps. So there you go, that's the padding. So this thing's coming out pretty cool. I built a big 1-inch angle iron frame, like a picture frame, kind of like a tray. And once I padded the face and then where the edge of the glass would go, I had a gasket all the way around the glass, and I set the glass in the tray, and then I've got these 4 stop bars that are also angle iron, but they're 3/4, so it's a little smaller. That way, the way that it sets in up here, it pretty much lines up with the look of the 1-inch on the outside. I welded tabs all the way around that hold it in place. There's tabs on the bottom. And then this is where the caster wheels are gonna go that allow it to slide. I had to like drill a countersunk hole on the side, and then I welded from the back so that also doesn't protrude into where the glass is. But there's so much padding, a little bit wouldn't have hurt. And to finish it nicely, it's got some 1/4 round wooden trim that was glued into that 3/4 angle before I painted it. So that's my sliding glass door project for my friend's piano room. It's gonna have 5 wheels on the bottom. And then I built these plates up here to receive the hanging rollers. But there's only 2 of those, so they're just gonna stabilize it. Those aren't gonna be for a lot of weight. And I had to make sure this plate was gonna hover off the glass enough to where, you know, it never contact it. It's holding in there super tight. It's tough to put these bars on, because there's padding on those too, but you can see it's on both sides, and then there's the gasket around the glass. Tough to install those bars, but it made a really nice tight fit, so I'm pretty happy with it. You can see also this is going to be the top of the door. So you can see up here it holds in the same way. I've got the screws countersunk and they hold that bar in. And there was a stud on this bar on each side, which also helps hold the plate, which is connected to this bar. So you got to put the top and bottom on, then you put these side pieces on, and the plate slips over this stud sticking out and holds on that way. So it's coming out good. This is the last corner that I haven't gotten in, but you can see there's some padding in there. I just need the padding at the bottom of the door to compress a little more, which it's already working on it. That's why I'm putting these shims in here, because once that padding down there compresses a bit, I'll have a little more room. Now that corner is already in down there, and everything else, this is the gasket I had to order to go around the window. This is some good hard rubbery plastic stuff with like a metal lining in between the rubber, not touching the glass. The inside of it is also rubber, but the metal's kind of like in there. You can just see because I had to cut the 90 out. or the 45. But otherwise, it's fitting nice and tight into the seal here, which I just gotta slowly work this out and get it all straight. But for the most part, it's getting there. And then here's the bottom of it. That's with the trim piece on. So that's kind of how it's gonna look. It's just a nice rounded look, and then it hits the seal. So that's pretty much the way the door is gonna look when it's all finished. This will be like the inside of the room. And then if you're looking at it from the outside, it's just the flat angle iron, so it's nice. And so that's kind of where it's at. I probably just need to let that compress a little bit more. I know that there's room because I can see it in there. It's like the foam is still expanded, so I need it to compress and maybe sit there with that shim for a bit. And then this corner should sink into place.
Happened. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. My neighbors compete to see who can put up more blinding lights. The kids all wish away the month 'cause they want presents in sight. This year had me so mad. I've been bad, got coal that is sitting under my tree. I think that my Christmas has died. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. When I was just a boy, Christmas brought so much joy. Couldn't wait for the presents and laughter. I couldn't sleep late at night, looking for Santa with lights. Those are the memories I still remember. Then I became a man, lost sight of who I am. But right in front of me was the answer. 'Cause on Christmas I feel joy, and I turn back to a boy. The answer is to stay young forever. This is not a Christmas. This is not a Christmas song. This is not a Christmas.
And then I have a bracket. Since there wasn't a stud, I built a bracket to catch the last bit of the track. Pretty cool.
Christmas, this is not a Christmas song. let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. I'm never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today. I will never be the same. Cause that's what it takes.
Overall, this project was really cool. Definitely gave me a run for my money, and I lose sleep over this stuff sometimes. You know, there's times I'm laying in bed thinking about measurements. I'm thinking about how that certain bolt is going to go through, and is it going to hit the glass or not, and how much clearance do I have, and you know, it's just all a part of kind of bringing these ideas to life when, you know, no other contractor will really do it. I mean, at least for less than some unbelievable price. So I thought this was really cool, and as it came together, it just looked better and better, and you know, eventually it was finished up, and we were able to add the little finishing touches to it. Now, before we even started on this door project, I actually did a few little makeover things to the room. We added in a couple of switches that were dimmers on the wall, and a couple light fixtures that I had to go in and run some wires through the attic, so that way Kevin could properly light up this new piano as well. He wanted to be able to adjust the lighting for the music desk, and there was one fixture above you kind of behind, and then we added the other fixture where it was going to shine right into the piano, so if the lid was open, you could see really nicely the inner workings of the piano as well as under the lid. And I thought that was super cool. So before we even got to this project, I was actually in there doing some paint work, switching out some plugs, outlets, and you know, switches and plates, and then getting a few new fixture boxes mounted in the attic. So this whole room plan was something that Kevin had kind of dreamed up himself, and I was glad to help him put this together. And overall, I think it just came out fabulous. The room is pretty much ready for the new piano to come in. The Kawai Shigeru, the vault, the Shigeru vault. There's the door again. It's about 6 feet wide, huge piece of glass. I was able to call upon my little Cricut maker, and I ordered some frosted vinyl. So of course we couldn't sandblast this glass, and we wanted to also be able to remove this, but what we did was we took the Kawai logo, and I was able to go into the Cricut software and kind of do some cutting, pasting, and flipping. Don't ask how I designed the letters for Vault. It was totally not a font. There was no font available. If you look at the Shigeru Kawai logo, it's just a logo that was specially made for Kawai. It's not an actual font. So when you look at the Vault letters, that was something that I totally had to design between some cutting and pasting and even adding and subtracting a little bit of things here. to get that vault to actually look like it fit with the Shigeru lettering. And Kevin was pretty happy with it. I think overall, when I sat back and looked at it, I thought it was awesome. And these are those kind of things that just make these projects so fun. This font for Shigeru doesn't actually exist. And just like I thought, it was a logo that was created for Kawai. So what I did was I took the Shigeru Kawai logo. I was able to use Shigeru, obviously, and with the Kawai and the Shigeru, I built the vault part because I was able to steal the V from, I think it was part of the W in Kawai, and then I had to change the leg a little bit. So the V came from the W, I believe. The A, there's 2 A's in Kawai, and that was one of them that I stole. The U came from the end of Shigeru, and then the L is actually the E. If you can see it, it's in there. I was able to copy and paste, and cut the little pieces I didn't need. I had to build the top, I think, from part of the U. And then the T is just the L flipped over, and then I was able to move that leg over a little bit so it's more centered to make the T. Now, once I got that finished, I wasn't happy with the V being the same size because the Shigeru, the S is bigger. It's a little emphasized. So I said, well, what if I blow up that V a little bit and it looks like this one's going to fit a lot better. So the V's a little bit bigger, and I feel like you can see it stand out much better just with that little bit of difference. So looks like this is kind of where we're going to be. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to leave it. There might be a few little changes that I make, but I think I'm getting close. Now, I always like the way that my friend Kevin kind of plans things, He's equally interested in, doing these projects and kind of getting some cool things done at his house as he is interested in the presentation of it. So I remember he mentioned, not only do we want to build this glass door, but we're going to kind of celebrate the welcoming of this new piano into his home for his birthday party. So basically, he was going to have a birthday. There was a deadline for the door, which that definitely stressed me out a little bit, but hey, we got it figured out. So there was going to be this party, which was really cool because he's like, that way we can kind of showcase the new piano. There's going to be a professional musician there, a very awesome, local artist who a lot of people love. And he'd also be able to kind of showcase this glass door and be like, hey, maybe we can leave it closed at first, and then I can kind of welcome everybody in, almost like an unveiling or whatever. So I thought that was really cool, and he said, I want you to make sure that you're at this party because you're going to be a big part of this build, and I thought that was really cool. I love things like this. So not only was it a neat build, but it was also something that we could kind of enjoy and just, look back on it and really, kind of see how everybody appreciates the work that went into this whole operation of getting this new piano and setting the house up for it and keeping it, from the cats being able to jump on it and things like that. Of course, the piano had to go through a series of tunings before it's going to get to that point where it really holds nicely. But we went ahead and got ready for the party, and it was great to get to enjoy meeting some of Kevin's other friends and the people that he works with. And as well, we got to watch Doc Watkins from San Antonio play some stuff and do his thing. We had a electric piano set out on the the outer deck, which is really cool, and then they came in and we played on the new piano a bit. It was overall a great success. I thought it was super cool. I think Kevin did a really good job with all his planning and ideas, and I was glad that I was able to help bring all that stuff to life.
Kevin was telling me, I haven't seen it all.
Well, as we bring another video to a close, I gotta say I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. And if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to hit it. You know, it's what helps me grow the channel. If you have any special ideas of DIY projects that you'd like to see done, leave it in the comments. Because you never know, there might be something around here that I've already done. I mean, I've got projects everywhere around my house, and even though I finish them up, usually there's 5 or 6 of them open and being done in the process before one actually gets finished. So if you happen to drop the right comment, I just might prioritize that particular project and get a video going for you. So I hope that you guys learned some good stuff. Again, feel free to leave those comments, and I'll see you back on the next one. You guys, peace out and safe building out there.